What does that tell us about creation? If God is all-knowing, what can we say about creation and God's role in creation?
Well, he certainly had to know about it.
Mm-hmm. If he's all-knowing, he had to know about it. Okay. So he didn't just stumble on our world and say, oh, there's a world here. Maybe I'll be its God. Okay. What else could we say?
Well, he's all-knowing, he would know how to create.
Mm-hmm.
Whether he did or not
It's a whole other question.
It's not necessarily an all-knowing question.
Right.
Something had to start it, though. That I love nature, and I always look at everything with a keen eye, and I think as I look at it, the wings are gone on this one because it evolved in such a way, or it had a purpose in its being, and it all manifested itself into us as a intelligent human being. I mean, it's a crazy thought, but like God created all these things to come up with a realization of Himself, of us, and
so what then? If we take the "we are made in the image of an all-knowing God" seriously, what does that say about us?
well, we're not all knowing.
We're not all-knowing. But we have that craving to search after knowledge.
Okay.
That's something that's kind of inborn in human, is wanting to know.
Oh, sure.
That's what changes civilizations, is knowledge.
And that drive to discover that leads us to climb over the mountain and pull a lobster out of the ocean and say, I wonder if this is good to eat. So there's a piece of that. One of the things I learned in my first astronomy class in college was that the gravitational forces that hold the Earth together and hold our atmosphere around it, if the Earth had begun to form less than 10 miles off from where it did, closer to the sun, it would not have developed an atmosphere that could sustain life. There wouldn't have been.
The sun would have burned it off.
Right. And if it had been less than 10 miles further away, the gravitational pull of the sun would not have been enough to put it in orbit in such a way that it could have developed a breathable atmosphere for carbon-based life.
Certainly for year-round.
Right. So we are within all of the vastness of space. We had to be within
farther.
10 miles of where we are, one way or the other, or we don't become who we are. And I'm sitting there going, oh, wait.
So is this intelligent design?
So did this happen by accident? And of course, the pure scientist says, of course.
Of course.
And
then we just adapted because of it.
Right. And yet,
Something.
is it far-fetched to say, there was a force that said, no, here.
Oh, it's just the thought is just overwhelming.
Yes.
Yeah.
I promise I won't give you too bad a headache. So, all right, let's then talk about, again, an all-knowing God, back to our center. We're going to talk about theological anthropology. We have an all-knowing God. What do we say then about humanity?
Well, he's given us knowledge to discern.
And that questing after knowledge, if not the ability to know what to do with it all the time, but that questing after it. What else can we say about humanity with an all-knowing God?
Well, I was hoping that we would develop compassion, but I see that I think that it's changed considerably.
Well, I think we strive after it.
I don't think that has anything to do with all-knowing, per se.
No?
Not necessarily. I mean, a humanity not created by an all-knowing God or not in relationship with an all-knowing God could still develop compassion. But we could say that God has some insight into, if God is all-knowing, God then has insight into human thought. Because if he's all-knowing, he knows that. Right?
Right.
So that's distinctive then from a God who isn't all-knowing, who may or may not have insight into
Human thought.
human thought. And what would that, okay, I don't want to go down that road. This is how you get in trouble with
Yeah.
this. This is why theologians drink so much beer.
Does it get better?
No, it just gets,
Okay.
when you drink enough beer,
Yeah, right.
you don't care anymore.
It all starts making
We
sense.
thank
after a
God we're
while.
here
Yeah.
and healthy.
No, I believed at one point in seminary that I had a handle on kind of all of theology, but it was because we were drinking in a pub and after the fourth beer, it all makes sense.
More sense anyway.
Yeah. So, all right. How does, again, postulating that all-knowing God, how does the interaction between God and humanity impact God and impact humanity?
You got me.
There aren't right answers to this. They're just, we may point at you and scream heretic, but there aren't right answers.
Well, is it the community? Is it to
Could be. If particularly,
community?
mhm. If we postulate an all-knowing God and a humanity that's drawn to an all-knowing God, then one of humanity's impetuses would be to know more about each other, which could lead to the building of a community. Certainly more likely to lead to a building a community than humanity that is uninterested.
Well, like begets like.
Mhm.
Makes you ponder, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm really going
Yeah.
different directions right now.
That's okay. You're supposed to. All right. Again, we have the all-knowing God. Now we get to the fun question. Sin and evil. If God is all-knowing, what is separation from God?
Well, sin and evil.
Doubt.
Biblically says that, but if he's all-knowing, I don't know what all-knowing has to do with whether sin and evil
Right.
becomes the separation.
Right. Well, that's the question then.
Yeah.
But if God is all-knowing, is the rejection of God the rejection of knowledge?
That's a good question.
So could we therefore say that the original sin, or the primary sin, if you don't like the word original, is the refusal to learn?
To become ignorant?
Mm-hmm.
Then you're no longer human?
Not that you're no longer human, maybe,
Well,
but that you're no longer
You can't take care of yourself.
that you're no longer in
Or-
relationship with God.
Hmm.
That if God is all-knowing, then to reject God is to reject knowledge.
But yet, in the Garden of Eden story, isn't it the tree of knowledge?
Knowledge of good and evil.
Knowledge of good and evil, but you're still seeking knowledge.
You're still seeking knowledge.
You're still trying to seek knowledge. You're not trying to reject knowledge
No.
or reject God, but yet, because you were seeking
Knowledge.
knowledge, you became
yes,
separated
from God.
who supposedly all knows.
Knowing, yes. So,
If you keep seeking knowledge so much, you can drive yourself crazy too.
that is true. But then what does it look like to reject an all-knowing God?
You mean by knowing?
Foolish.
Knowing,
Mhm.
oh,
And yet we have a God who says it is in the foolishness. I mean, this is what Jesus says, that my message will seem foolish to the wise and wise.